All right, let's do it. Ladies and gentlemen, joining me on the line, and we have a lot of ground to cover here, and it begins with an earworm that I need to cuss you out about. John Cafiero is on the line. Hey, John, how are we doing today?
Great. Thanks, B-sox. I really appreciate you having me on. It's good to be with you.
All right, so we have a lot of stuff going on, all kind of about the same thing, correct?
Yeah. There's a lot of different components that all connect together into one big multimedia experience.
All right, so let's start. Of course, you're a part of Osaka Popstar, right?
Yes.
New single is out now, The Land of Hatchet and Malachi, which is part of a comic book debut issue for Sweetie Candy Vigilante, correct?
Yes.
I got it all right. How about that? But I got to cuss you out a little bit because that song is such an earworm. I've been sitting here this morning going, ba, 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 da,
I'm
da,
glad
da,
to hear
da,
that.
da, 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 da.
I am really glad to hear that because it's a very bizarre song, but I absolutely love it. I'm so happy with the way that it turned out. I think it's really unique. Honestly, I think it's the perfect musical accompaniment to the current issue of the comic book series, Sweetie Candy Vigilante, and just to the series in general, because it's very much the same vibe as the comic. That song and the music and our version of it, like the comic, is a lot of fun, but very bizarre.
And I wanted to say that that comic book is exactly what a comic book should be. It looks great. It's got great coloring. The framing on it is all great. It's a little out there. It's a little weird, and you kind of wonder what's going on. It's a little sexy. It's exactly what a comic book should be.
Oh, I'm so glad to hear you say that. I mean, those are all the things that I would think would be fun and entertaining in a comic book. So I'm glad to deliver. And really, I mean, some of the reviews that we've gotten have been really, really complimentary, and I think right on point. Like, for example, one reviewer had said it's Picture Willy Wonka, directed by Quentin Tarantino. another one was something like a Technicolor grindhouse film, a gory pop color epic reminiscent of the glory days of heavy metal magazine and late night cult films, endlessly imaginative. And I couldn't think of bigger compliments, but at the same time, I think they really accurately describe what the series is like. But I'm so glad that you dig it, and it's just a lot of fun to do.
All right, so let's break down this nugget. Let's peel back the layers on this onion. Explain to the folks at home that may not know what's going on. Sweetie Candy Vigilante. It's a comic book that...
So Sweetie Candy Vigilante is a comic book that is written and created by my wife, Suzanne Cafiero, and I produce and art direct and edit the series. And basically, Sweetie Candy Vigilante is a honey-dipped, dark humor-infused horror fantasy that tells the story of Sweetie, an ethereal, beautiful, charming, well-meaning, but unquestionably unhinged supernatural being and blood relative of the mythological Candyman. It turns out that first of all, I'll back up and say she grew up with watching her parents run a local mom-and-pop sweet shop, but what she didn't know at the time was that her father was a candy wizard, and he used magic candy potions in his creations that never harmed anyone. Quite the opposite. They brought joy to the community, enriched the community, and enriched the body and the soul of those who consumed them. But then as an adult, years later, she gets pushed to the limits by a mysterious disappearance of her parents and the gentrification of New York City, which is where her parents' sweet shop was located, and the gentrification of the city destroying mom-and-pop shops. And then a fitness-obsessed mayor comes in and declares war on sugar, outlawing candy and sugar and cake and ice cream in the process.
Yeah.
So then she just snaps and declares a war of her own on anyone who treads on her birthright to sweetness. And she finds her father's library, and then she becomes a candy wizard herself. Awesome. And it turns out that she possesses skills far beyond her father's, and she starts testing these secret formulas out on herself and becomes this all-powerful candy being. And basically she starts to use her otherworldly powers and her family proprietary secrets in a quest to make the world a sweeter place. And she has this Candy Vigilante sweet shop factory discreetly located in the industrial outskirts of Brooklyn. And she fights crime, with a team of supernatural allies that share her passion to make New York City less salty, and uses this magical arsenal of handcrafted confectionery weapons that are lethal on those who are bad, but scrumptious and sometimes life-changing for those who are good. So if you're a good person, eating or being exposed to her confectionery weapons or treats can be absolutely delicious and elating, but if you're a bad person, they could melt the flesh off of your skull.
Oh, that's so great. John Cafiero on the line with me right now. It's kind of it feels like Twisted Metal mixed with Suicide Squad and Candyland.
Cool.
And that was
good.
the vibe I got.
Yeah, that's I would say if you needed to do a pitch meeting, that would work, sure.
Just imagine.
I mean, one of the taglines that we always even say is, "It's not like a little sugar is going to kill you, right?"
I love it. All right, so that's the comic book, and there is it's volume 2 is out now, right?
Yeah, volume 1 started in 2022 and came out coinciding with the release of Osaka Pop Star's record Ear Candy. And for Ear Candy, Osaka Pop Star did a punk cover or a power pop version of the Archie's classic Sugar Sugar, and that tied in with the first issue of Volume 1, where Sweetie is just like annihilating a bunch of bad guys in a bar. She's, bursting bubblegum bubbles in the face of a guy and his flesh melts off, and she blows pixie stick dust in the face of another and melts his gun and his hand in the process, and then walks over to the jukebox and presses play on Osaka Pop Star's cover of Sugar Sugar. So that came as a free download with the first issue of Volume 1. We went through the first 6 issues, which are now collected in a Sweetie Candy Vigilante trade paperback that came out in January. And the demand was there, and the story certainly had plenty more to continue with. So we've just kicked off the sequel, which is Sweetie Candy Vigilante Volume 2, and issue number 1 of Volume 2 was just released last week, and literally picks up on a cliffhanger ending where issue 6 and the end of the trade paperback leave you. And the land of Hachi Malachi ties into the issue. And really, to me, it's almost like a theme song for the series, because it really is as if it's from Sweetie's well-meaning but unhinged candy-coated glasses point of view.
That's a great way to say it, because when you're listening to it, it's and I'm not trying to sweeten you up here. It's a very good song, but you can kind of feel that unhinged kind of insanity sitting behind it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's psychotically nice, just like Sweetie.
Oh, it's so great. John Cafiero on the line with me right now. Sweetie Candy Vigilante out now. SweetieCandyVigilante.com is the best place to go for all the details on it, right?
Yes, absolutely. You can order all the comics as well as a bunch of variant and rare covers. You could watch a trailer for the first issue of the first volume. And you could also look for Sweetie Candy Vigilante in your local comic shop. We're out through Dynamite Comics, which is one of the biggest indies and one of my favorites in the business. And they've got some pretty heavy-hitting titles. They're the company behind Red Sonja, Vampirella, James Bond 007, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, Game of Thrones. So we're really happy to be with them. I've been a fan of that company and their output for 2 decades now. And I honestly, when Suzanne and I were first putting the series together independently, I'd always thought they'd be the right home. And after talking to a few different companies and then speaking to Dynamite, it was apparent that they were the right place. And it was really where I kind of felt that it belonged all along. And so, yeah, you could get it at your local comic shop, but certainly make it easy for yourself. Go to SweetieCandyVigilante.com, and that's SWEETIE, CandyVigilante.com, and you could get everything there.
We'll have a link up at the website. Going back, this was the brainchild of your wife, correct?
Yes.
My
wife, Suzanne.
What's going on in your house that this is the topics that's coming up between you two?
We're pretty unique individuals. So we make a great, there's no coincidence that we're married. And
I don't mean that in a bad way at all. It's just
no,
it's
not
so
at all.
great. If I try and have a comic book conversation with my wife, I get the like bare minimum feedback. I can only imagine if I went to my wife with, I have an idea for a comic book and it involves Candyland being Twisted Metal or, whatever. How did she bring it up to you?
We were having dinner, and we were watching reruns of The Big Bang Theory. And she had told me that she had this idea for this character, Sweetie, that would use all these candy weapons, and started telling me a little bit about what she had in mind. And I said, this sounds great. I think, this would be a really cool series. You should write it. I'll produce it. We'll do it as an independent comic. And then once we've got a few issues, because I wanted to have like a bunch of material in the can so there wouldn't be any stress over deadlines or release schedules or anything like that. So we had literally finished about 5 issues and starting on the 6th by the time we inked the deal with Dynamite. But yeah, she just started telling me about it, and I said, I think this is great. You should write it. We'll do it. And here we are.
That's awesome. That really is. Congratulations to you guys. That's a very, very cool story.
Oh, thanks so much. Yeah, it's fun. I've always found that while it's not for everybody and it's not always going to happen, the only way to make things happen is to just go out and do it. And if you don't try, you're never going to succeed. And, one of my entertainment heroes, John Waters, actually told me that in my 20s. He had just said, if you want to do something, you just got to go out and do it. And as my career progressed, I looked back on that advice and thought, wow, how right he really was. That's so true.
My dad has a similar saying. He says, F-I-J-I, F it, jump in.
Yeah, it's true. You have to.
John Cafiero on the line with me right now. To the artwork itself, you said you're producing. Are you drawing it, or do you guys have an artist for this?
We have different artists that we work with, and I just art direct. So I actually used to be an animator and an illustrator years ago, but at this point, when multitasking and doing so much, and I haven't illustrated myself in so many years, so I will very carefully review a long roster of people until I find the person that I think is the right candidate, and then once I've honed in on them, bring them on board. And from there, it's just a matter of, giving them the script, explaining the way it should be, and then they'll come back. And then if I feel some tweaks are needed or changes or a specific point of view, I'll give them that feedback. And then, eventually we get to a final product.
John,
it's actually quite arduous process.
I have no doubt. I just wanted to say, just pass along my praise to him, because you guys have a fantastic art group, because this is a really good looking comic.
Thanks so much. And I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, everybody really does their best. And I feel that's in part my director philosophy, because everything that I do from the point of view of a film director, which I am. And I just try to bring out the best in everyone and all of the resources that we have. And I think with the right approach, that's an achievable goal. And I think we've done that. I really do. I mean, even, like Jeff Zornow, who illustrated the first 6 issues and still does covers for us. I've worked with him for many years in a number of different capacities, but I felt I even watched him grow further as an artist and working on this. And now Thiago Vel, who we've brought on for the 2nd volume, the same thing. I really think, and our colorist, Antonio Fabella, and Ned Ivory, who had done color for us on some of them and now does covers as well. We really do. We have an excellent team, and with the right TLC, it all just gels and creates this candy explosion.
John, I know you got to get going here. Real quick, what else you guys got coming up?
I'm not sure if you're familiar with the Dr. Demento Covered in Punk album that I conceived of and produced, but I am producing Dr. Demento Covered in Punk Volume 2 right now.
Oh, awesome.
The first volume is out, which if you're a fan of Dr. Demento, the novelty songs like Fish Heads and, Dr. Demento Discovered Weird Al, we have classic and contemporary punk bands doing covers of the songs made famous on the Dr. Demento show. And then we have demented artists putting a demented spin on punk classics, and the whole thing hosted by Dr. Demento himself. If that sounds appealing, check out that on dementedpunk.com or coveredinpunk.com. It's Dr. Demento Covered in Punk, and if you dig what you see and hear, know that we're in the process of working on Volume 2 right now for Dr. Demento Covered in Punk. Sweetie Candy Vigilante, the trade paperback, is out, collecting Volume 1. Volume 2 just started. Issue 1, Volume 2, out as of last week. Issue 2 will be out in April and bi-monthly thereafter. There'll be 6 issues in Volume 2. There's new Osaka Pop Star material I'm working on, The Land of Hachi Malachi, obviously, the new single that's out, and our most recent release, Ear Candy, which also ties into Sweetie, is available. So
you have a lot
check it
going
out.
on.
I do.
I will put links up to everything.
Cool.
John, thank you so much. I appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun, and this just looks like a great comic book, and the song is legitimately still stuck in my head. So,
Oh, thank you, B-sox. I'm so glad you're digging the stuff that I'm doing, and really appreciate your support, and I hope that your listeners dig it too.